All right, what's up? What's good? What's happening? What it do, baby? You are tuned in to another edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. It's your boy Xavier, aka X, aka Zay, joined by my brother from another, Kory Blackshear. Y'all know him as KB. Man, we talked about it last week, KB. How it was a bittersweet time of year for us basketball fans. And on one conference, it's all wrapped up. On another, we're waiting to see what's going to end up happening. I think we're going to end up getting a game seven, but we done watching the Eastern Conference until last went to next Wednesday, man.
Yeah, man. If you saw the way that game four went the other night, I'm glad we done because that was just sickening. And honestly, with the Eastern Conference playoffs wrapped up now, I mean, it wasn't other than a few here, a few here and there, wasn't that memorable of a playoffs like a playoff type of bracket for the Eastern Conference. If you want to be completely honest, the Western Conference has been pretty good, but I mean, what can you say outside of maybe Detroit, Orlando, the Hawks and Knicks for a few games? You don't really have too much to go off of from the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. It was really kind of underwhelming, if you ask me,
And
considering
and, and
everything.
here and here's the sad thing about what you just said about the two series you mentioned. Those happened in the first round.
Yeah, that's my point. Like we came into the playoffs with a lot of hype. The first round we had two game sevens in the Eastern Conference between the Raptors and the Cavs, and then we had a game seven between the Pistons and the Magic. Then you go to round two, you're talking about, you know, the Philadelphia 76ers getting swept by New York Knicks. And then you're talking about the Detroit Pistons going out in seven against the Cavaliers. I mean, we looked at certain games and certain series and we like highlighted them because of certain matchups. This just goes to show that pretty much depending on the matchup, certain teams you may be able to beat, like like the Celtics, they were geared to possibly beat maybe like a Detroit. They're geared to beat maybe even a New York, but New York was geared to beat the Celtics. You know what I'm saying? So it was like certain matchups favored the Knicks, and they've been blazing through these playoffs like at a rate that we didn't haven't ever seen with as far as their point differential. So it's been just a crazy type of thing to witness in real time, just because of the fact that we knew the Knicks were good. I don't know if everybody knew they were like this good because of the way, like, you know what I'm saying? Basically, Mike Brown's first year, a lot of expectation to get back after last year. So, this is when we were talking about wide open Eastern Conference. It really was because all of that playoff experience played a part, and I feel like into what they are now. So that's exactly what we got with the Eastern Conference. But this Western Conference, I mean, you talking about two heavyweights jockeying for position right now. This can go either way.
It can, but I want to say this about the Western Conference playoffs too, outside of those two teams that we're going to talk about in just a moment. What this series has showed us right now, this Western Conference Finals, is that nobody in the West is close right now to either one of those two teams.
Yeah, I mean, we got the best matchup possible, even with all the narrative surrounding the matchup itself. We got the two best teams possible, which is what we always wanted. Now, I do feel like that they're in their own tier, and then when you go below them, then you may have like the Nuggets and some of the lower seeds. Like you got the Nuggets, even if you want to include the Timberwolves as well. Like the Timberwolves show like they're not on the Spurs level. Not right now. Like they were in a dogfight just to get those two games. And had Wemby not got suspended that one game, they would have went out even sooner than that. So it is levels to this whole thing. And even now you're starting to see based off of what we just witnessed last night, it may even be levels for the Spurs. It may just be that because we talk about like we just talked about championship experience. We just talked about, sometimes you have to go through something to actually be able to, when you have it happen again, you're able to, be able to withstand certain things. I don't know. And the thing is with these Spurs, I think that is a good thing that they haven't been able to experience some of the things that they have just because of the fact that if you don't know any better, you don't have that pressure to do like to go out there and perform. You just have to go out there and play. Like you don't have the pressure that an OKC has because they've been to the mountaintop. So sometimes not having that pressure on you is a good thing because you get to just play free. But then at times you see like a little bit of their youth showing. You know what I'm saying? Like their youth, like their inexperience being in some of these moments shows at times. That's because they're ahead of schedule of what they probably were supposed to be. They're way ahead of schedule. So they're being in the championship window this early into their rebuild, which it happened pretty fast, to be honest with you, with their drafting well, them acquiring certain guys at through trades and free agency. Like they actually are so ahead of schedule that it's almost like they're playing with house money because we know this team's gonna be here for years to come.
Yeah, and it also has me questioning if Oklahoma City had a full deck right now, would this series already be over? Because J-Dub played well in game one. He obviously got injured in game two. But we talked about it a little last week when it came down to OKC's depth. And I talked a little about how just because you have depth doesn't mean that next man up mentality always works. Well, right now that idea is punching me in the face because Jared McCain, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace on the defensive end. You can't say enough about the job Isaiah Hartenstein did on Victor Wembanyama in Game 5 on Tuesday night. 3 of 11 shooting from the field for Wemby when Hartenstein was the primary defender.
Yeah, you gotta give him credit because I know a lot was made about him in the previous game. That he came in and he affected Wemby with more of the grabbing, the holding, doing things to kind of just get under their skin. Now, what you did say about those three guys between Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, and Jared McCain, yes, having depth is important, but having the right type of players for the system that you're running is also important. Jared McCain, in a lot of people's eyes, should never been traded from Philly. A lot of people, me myself included, he was one of those guys that was just a casualty of the situation because of his injury, and then he fell out of favor in Nick Nurse's rotation. But the guy can shoot, man, and he's come in like he's not bashful at all. Like he's not coming in being timid, and I think that's the thing. Like Alex Caruso's made the most of his minutes after going scoreless in the previous game. He comes out and he's shooting the ball. He's attacking. He's doing all the things, getting steals. He's doing everything that you expected Alex Caruso to do. Cason Wallace, same thing, picking up guys full court. Balls is in front of him. You can't just try to do like little crossovers in front of this guy because he is on the All NBA defensive team. So it's not like you are just gonna be able to just dribble the ball in his face and he's just gonna just retreat. He's gonna actually get up into your space and he's gonna try to steal the ball. Now, I gotta also give credit to Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams. He's come in at times and he's played well with his perimeter shooting. Sometimes he's even gotten into on the defensive end, but also just being able to, when your number's called, he's been able to come in, be instant offense. That's the one thing that I've noticed about every person that we just mentioned. They've been able to come in when their number's called and they've been able to affect the game. That's the reason why OKC is so dangerous. We know what Shai is going to do. Even with the bad shooting games that Shai has, he's still able to get to the free throw line. He's still able to affect the game in some way. And then if they start to double, then you see him being able to kick it out to these guys. And they're shooters, man. Like that's the thing. They're shooting the ball at such an effective rate that it's just like you're gonna pay every single time that you double shape because more than likely, outside of maybe Hartenstein, everybody on the floor at that time can shoot the ball. Whether it's Cason Wallace, whether it's Jared McCain, whether it's Alex Caruso, whether it's Chet Holmgren, you got shooters literally every single place. And then you bring in guys like Isaiah Joe. You even brought in Kyron Williams. He got called in, and he hasn't played but 2 games this entire series. He's even been called in and been effective. So it's just like it doesn't stop. It literally doesn't stop. They've been able to just pretty much go through their bench from their 6th man to their 10th guy and they've all been able to pretty much produce at a good rate. So that's the reason why they're winning games, because I think that they outscored their the San Antonio bench by a significant number last night, if I'm not mistaken. I got to get those numbers to you, but it's the fact that they're winning games in different ways now, because, like I said, Shea didn't shoot the ball that well last night, but he still got to the free throw line, I think 17 times. He went 16 to 17 from the line. So he still was getting points, but he was just doing it in a different way because he wasn't shooting the ball well. So that's what makes them so dangerous. So I feel like that's something that the Spurs, I'm with you. I still believe this series is going to go 7 games. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one for the Spurs in the game 6, because, if I think about it, man, I think they really wish they had game 3 back when they were up 15-0 to start that game, and they effectively collapsed and was able to go on and lose that game. I think that one hurt them. That hurt, just because when you got guys down, like when you got a team down like that, you got to be able to put your foot on the neck and somehow finish that game. You got to, like, 15 points. That's nothing in the NBA. We know that. So you got to be able to finish that game, man. Like, you got to be able to finish that game, albeit in the first quarter. You got to somehow be able to establish a dominant lead and build from there, because we see that no lead is safe.
The Spurs outscored Oklahoma City in bench scoring points last night, 40-33. So it wasn't that much of a deficiency. If anything, last night.
My bad.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, if anything, last night, San Antonio's starters didn't show up the way that they did. Some of them that should have showed up and we thought would play better. Last night, I think, was the first night you can say De'Aaron Fox was really hampered by that high ankle sprain that he's been playing through. Only 9 points on 4 of 15 shooting from the field. He did have 8 assists, collected 4 rebounds. Devin Vassell only giving him 6 points on 2 of 11 shooting. It's not even the points for me, KB. It's how bad the efficiency was here for San Antonio last night. As a team, they only shot 40% from the field. Meanwhile, Oklahoma City shot 48% from the field. From the three-point line, 12 of 41, that's 29%. OKC, 14 of 32, that's 44%. And that'll get you right there. That was the difference in that ball game right there. But we've been beating him up a little bit, so we got to show some love to Chet Holmgren too. He showed up last night. 16 points, 11 rebounds, a double-double for both he and Isaiah Hartenstein. And I didn't know it was after Keldon Johnson yammed on him that it's like he woke up and he finally came into the game, meaning Chet Holmgren.
Yeah, and I ain't gonna lie, that's the only thing that's kind of frustrating with Chet, is you see all the offensive talent there. It just sometimes bothers me when he's timid to shoot. I'm thinking about it right now, if you're at worst the number 3 option on that team, sometimes you're the number 2, sometimes you're the number 3. If at worst you're the number 2, the number 3 option, you gotta at least get up a minimum of 15 shots a game, in my opinion, just because of the fact that, if you have to make Wemby work on defense, because if he's able to just sit back and clog that paint, he will. And I think it is sometimes just as simple as getting to the body of Wemby and being able to attack him on offense. If you attack him on offense, that limits his energy on the offensive end on the other end. I think that Chet has such a unique ability to stretch the floor that he can make things happen, especially when you're talking about him going on against like Cornette on that second unit. You gotta attack him because he's not as mobile as Wemby. And if you're talking about you're going through a slump, you gotta shoot yourself sometimes into rhythm. I think that Chet has, at times, his motor looks a little bit off sometimes. Sometimes you see it, and then sometimes it'll just disappear, and he'll fade off into the background, just like anybody else. But he's such a unique player. Like I said, effective shot blocker. He can be even if it's like you said, a 16-10 guy, 16-12 guy. That's something I need from you, because, like I said, if Shea's having a bad night and you're having a bad night, we're not more than likely in the game. We're actually probably getting blown out at that point, like they did in game 4. So it is a thing where, like, if he's not focused on, getting his shots in, getting his shots up, like, that is to the detriment of that team. It's just because, like I said, as much as I appreciate Jared McCain coming off the bench or Alex Caruso coming in and being effective, like, hey, bro, you 7 feet tall. You're our number 2 guy. You're a guy that's an all-star. You're a guy that's an all-NBA player this year. Like, I need it to be you. I would much rather it be you than a guy that I'm not asking for him to do certain things, but I'm glad that he is giving me certain output. Like, that's the thing with Chet. Like, you're a pick and pop threat. You even a pick and roll threat. You have the ability to pass the ball as well. So I think that Chet just has to stay engaged in the game at all times. Like, because he's such a great player, sometimes that he takes like these, like, almost like a mental lapse, like where he just checks himself out of the game mentally. And he's not aggressive. He's not looking to score. He's kind of, like I said, just looking like, at one point we can say, especially after game 1, he got pumped by Wemby. He did. And that was something that's just like, okay, if people going to call you out, you should be able to respond to whatever they're calling you out about. That was one of them. Like, if Wemby is going to play this type of game, I mean, it's a little bit extra something there with them two anyways. Even if no matter how much he tries to deny it, y'all, that's your rival at this point. If you got any type of rival in the league, that's your rival. Like, y'all played damn near the same position. He looked at his guys like the best in the world. Y'all look like y'all always gonna be linked to each other the same way, like a Luka Doncic and Trae Young have always been linked together, whether it's because of trade or not. It's just like two guys that are gonna pretty much be linked together for the majority of their career. Guys early on in their career who had success, been all-stars, defensive player of the year, all NBA players, like, they're going to be linked together for the majority of their career. So there's nothing Chet going to be able to do. But the thing you can do is, basically go to work and go at this guy every single time you play him, because he's going to go at you. I guarantee he's going to come out game 6, especially the way that he shot the ball last night. He's going to come out aggressive in game 6. You got to be able to come out and be aggressive at him as well, because, like I said, it's going to be a dogfight game 6 because you have a chance to close. They are trying to fight off elimination. It's going to be a lot on the line. So, both teams have won on each other's home floors. So it's not like the home court is that much of a difference maker in this series. I never thought it was going to be. We always said it was going to either be 6 or 7 games. We did. I will say that I had the Spurs winning in 6. OKC made me eat crow on that one because, like I said, they finding ways to win the game. They finding different ways to win. And, in spite of Shea's, poor shooting game, sometimes they're finding different ways to win. So this is one of them games Spurs are going to have to find. They didn't find a way to win outside of Wemby's bad shooting game last night. They couldn't find a way. De'Aaron Fox, like you said, was hobbled. But I'm going to tell you, X, before I hand it back over to you, where I still see a lot of youth in them. And I still see a lot of inexperience. And this is the thing. Between Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, the turnovers are killing them. Stephon Castle has been a problem. It's been a problem with him all series. But the turnovers last night were killing him. Because these aren't turnovers that they're just like dead ball turnovers. These are live ball turnovers. And so a lot of these are turning into fast break points. A lot of these are getting the break started. Like, I think that it's too much. It's too much. Like, the ball handling is too loose. It's too loose. And like I said, between Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, those two were the most egregious last night. But even Wemby, it gets to a point where you just say, like, man, we're losing these games because of all these turnovers. If we limit the turnovers, we win the game. Or at least we stand a better chance to win the game. So they got to cut the turnovers down if they want to have any chance to win game 6. Because if they're in the if they're in the 20s or even high teens, that's not spelling a good night for them. Because we know OKC has the guards to be able to play passing lanes and everything else. So they got to just limit the turnovers.
Well, outside of that, too, they got to bring the intensity and they got to come with the energy in game 6. And I expect they will. Wemby cannot come out with the same energy in game 6 that it appeared that he had in game 5. He just I don't want to give him any excuses, and I'm not going to, because they kept saying, is he tired? Is he fatigued? I don't know what he was, but he wasn't aggressive. He was not aggressive enough in this game. Yeah, there were a couple of times you saw him going down in the paint. You saw him throw down a couple of lobs, but it just was not a Wemby-like performance. And I know folks will probably look at the box score and say, but he still had 26 and got a couple of blocks. You got to pick. You got to watch the games, folks. You
You
got to pay
definitely
attention to
gotta
the
watch
games in their
those.
totality,
You
because
definitely gotta watch them.
it's very deceiving if you didn't watch the game last night. I will make the argument that the two most aggressive San Antonio Spurs players last night were Stephon Castle and Julian Champagnie from an offensive standpoint. Champagnie kept them into things in the first quarter. You talked about the turnover battle, and I agree with that. Here's something else where I'm seeing their youth. When OKC is able to go on these runs during these games, whether they're fighting their way back in or whether they're increasing a lead, San Antonio doesn't seem to have a way of being able to neutralize that on their offensive end of the floor. That's another place I'm seeing the youth too.
Yeah, and it's just like sometimes it is some things where you gotta call the time out, kind of get yourselves together. But also at times, I feels like San Antonio is too much worried about the whistles that they're not getting. You even heard Stephon Castle talk about it, that we don't get that luxury to play as physical as they do. Can't worry about that. Can't worry about that. First of all, they defending champs. They got the MVP on their side. They're gonna get certain calls. We already know they're gonna get those phantom calls where nobody touched them. They just fall down. Gotta play. You gotta play through it because, like I said, but also between I'll point out two things I saw last night. You can talk about the physicality, but if you're fouling Shea 94 feet from the basket, you're fouling them in the backcourt when it doesn't really matter. You're fouling them. You got to pick your spots. OKC ain't the team. Like, if you're going to play passing lanes, fine, but you can't gamble because once you gamble, you're out of the play. Now you playing four. Now they're playing 4-on-5, and we've seen that they've been effective with being able to play that type of basketball. Because if you're going to let them play 4-on-5 basketball, they'll do it. Now, what I'll say is that Champagnie did play. He probably was the best player on the Spurs last night for me. Stephon Castle, yes, he was effective. I just think that, like I said, for him, he has to limit his turnovers. Like that's the one thing that I will, if I had to critique him on anything, it's the turnovers. It's the, what I'm saying, like it's the ill-advised turnovers because some of them I looked at last night when he was like throwing the ball away and I said that's not good. And for him to turn over, I'm gonna like look up the stats for him as far as his turnovers this series, but I know it's not good. I just know that he's turned the ball over. Let's see. Okay. So Stephon Castle, through the first 4 games of this series, he had turned the ball over 22 times, which is
That's actually an improvement though, and I'm gonna tell you why. 20 of those times came in game one and game two.
22. Yeah. And see, I don't want to be hard on because like you got to think about a lot of these guys, this is their first playoff experience. Not only a first playoff experience, you got guys like even De'Aaron Fox, who's been a vet in the league for some years now. This is his first real deep playoff run. So but they got to be able to fight through certain things. But like I said, it's one thing when you're going against the defending champs that are already good. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by giving them extra possessions or giving them extra free throws that they don't necessarily need. Like I did like the way that Stephon Castle was attacking, putting his head down and driving, but it's sometimes you just got to be able to make that extra pass because, like, it is a good thing that you said that you got to watch the games because that was probably Wemby's worst game of the series. Actually, that wasn't probably his worst game. That was his worst game of the series. He just looked lethargic out there. He looked like he wasn't really in it, and that was from the jump. Now, he that like even if you ask him, 6 rebounds. He wasn't controlling. He wasn't controlling the rebounding game. He wasn't. He wasn't as effective as he usually is, and I don't know what that is. But what I will say is, if you are going to be the man, if you're going to be the face of the NBA, it all comes with the territory. Because we've seen guys go in their first playoff runs, and they've had historical playoff runs. We've seen it with guys like, even when you're talking about the year that the Mavericks went, which was what I believe 2023, or the Mavericks went to the finals of 2024.
2024.
So 2024, OKC, they got close. They got close. What did they do? They retooled, got better, came back the next year, and they won. So it is some things that, like, sometimes you might just be a year or two ahead of schedule. I don't necessarily believe that, because I do feel like they still have a legitimate chance in this series, but they don't have the luxury of Wemby showing up some nights, not showing up some nights. Like, it has to be consistent. And while it's unfair because you have a lot of talent on your team, that's just the type of player that you are. You make everything on that offense go. You set the standard for how that defense is. You make that defense a top 5 defense. Nobody else. Nobody else. As great as some of those guys, Stephon Castle is as a defender, you are the reason why that defense is in the upper echelon of the NBA. So you don't get the luxury of some guys. Like, Shea could have an off night, but an off night for Shea and an off night for you don't yield the same type of results. You see what I'm saying? Like, they don't yield the same results. So you can't go out there, basically put up a stinker, because at this point, you got 2 games. You got 2 games. We got to get through the first one, but you got 2 games to make that game last night disappear. Because nobody's going to, if you put up 2 monumental games, nobody's going to talk about the stinker that you just had. But you got 2 games to make it right. And like I said, Mitch Johnson, it's going to come down to you doing some excellent coaching. You were a coach of the year candidate for a reason. I felt like you should have been coach of the year. You are going to have to figure this thing out, whether it's like moving certain guys in and out. But I'm also not really a big fan of what Luke Kornet has done this series. I think that he's been ineffective in the minutes that he's been out there. I know he's another 7-footer, big body, but it's something about a drop off when you go from Wemby to Luke Kornet.
OKC goes right to the paint.
Right to the paint, and there's no fear. Even with a 7-footer in the paint, there's no fear to go into the paint. As soon as he's subbed out the game, it's like a different type of, it's like their focus shifts to go into the basket, which I get it, because it's a different type of defender. Luke Kornet is not looking to, he can block shots, but he's not the same type of player. So it is a little bit of a difference, but I don't think that they've won those 9 Wemby minutes as much as they needed to this series to actually, pull away from OKC, because we've seen them get leads, but then OKC closes the gap rather quickly because you got to think about those non-Wemby minutes, those, non-Stephon Castle minutes. When you're going deeper into your bench, that's when you start to see them lose a little grip on it, because, like, even though guys like Carter Bryant played well, it's just like, have they been able to sustain that level of excellence every single game? And the answer is no.
Something else that happened before the game last night. Clip went viral. Keldon Johnson was giving Wemby some type of pep talk before the game. I don't know if that's a good idea. Maybe that shouldn't happen again. Maybe it should be Harrison Barnes or one of those other vets on the team. Stephon Castle, Harper, De'Aaron Fox. Just don't let it be Keldon Johnson, because whatever he told him, it was not effective.
Yeah, can't be you. Can't be you. Right message, wrong messenger. Because, like I said, this is your first real deep playoff run as well. So, if anybody, it would come from either a Luke Kornet or even a Harrison Barnes, somebody who's done it, at a high level. Somebody, like, they have champions on that team. So it's not like you could even go as guys like Kelly Olynyk. You got guys on that team that have been in some straight battles throughout the years. So does it need to come from Keldon Johnson? Nah. I like what he tried to do. I do. like a little, hype man speech or whatever, but it doesn't need to come
That's
from a
not your
guy.
role, brother. That's not
That's
your
not your role.
role.
It's not your role, and it kind of sounds crazy because how you gonna tell me about being on the stage when this is your first time on this stage as well? We both doing this this is our first time together. We basically are in the same boat, except my expectation to perform is a lot higher than yours, brother. So it's kind of like I don't know. But even when we talked about like 6 men of the year, Kevin Johnson ain't looking too good when you talk about throughout history of 6 man awards. Like, he's definitely towards the bottom as far as like those guys that have won that award. Because while he's looked okay, he ain't, he ain't affected. He ain't moving the needle for me. It was like one of those awards. I was just like, okay, are you gonna give it to him or are you gonna give it to Jaime Jaquez? I don't know, but
He dunked all over Chet Holmgren in Game 5, and that was the most effective thing I've seen him do in this series.
yeah, like I mean, like I've seen some people even call him the. I'm not gonna go that far. They said he's the worst 6 man of the year award winner ever. I'm not gonna go that far. I'm pretty sure we can dig through history and probably find someone worse. But yeah, he's had a bad playoff series. So I ain't gonna lie. If he's giving Wemby a speech, somebody else needs to be giving him a speech as well, then, because he needs somebody to hype him up as well, because he hasn't played that great at all. So you just gotta have guys step it up, man. You going home, you know that place is gonna be rocking. So I think that it's important that they get out to a good start because we've seen that they struggle at times playing behind, and when they hit those dulls, those moments where they can't score, or it seems like it's got a lid on the basket. Like OKC, I feel like can play through it a lot more than they can. So they got to figure it out. But like I said, it's going to be a quick turnaround because things starting to wrap up. And I think that OKC, they smell blood in the water because they knew this was going to be a tough series. But I think they heard the chatter from outside that everybody was giving them, like counting them out. But like you said, you can't count out a champion because, like I said, they pretty much have the exact same core that they had last year. They pretty much, if anything, they've retooled. So it is safe to say that. I mean, it is like one of those things that you could say, like maybe if Jalen Williams was healthy, this series would have been over already because of how great he played in Game 1 of the series. So you knew what they were missing. But I mean, San Antonio just gonna have to weather the storm. That's really the only advice I can give them. Like, you got to weather the storm. You got to be able to fight. And this is really gonna be a 1 game series. These are separate games, but this is a 1 game series. You win Game 6, now you can focus your attention on Game 7, but you can't look too far ahead. That's what we see a lot of teams do because we've seen a lot of times in these closeout games, we've seen some straight stinkers. We've seen some stinkers. Like in these closeout games at a rate that I haven't seen in the playoffs in a while. Like closeout games, I don't think there should be any type of motivation for you to play your very best, but we've seen some straight garbage.
Yeah, but I'm hoping that Game 6 and 7 of this series is going to be closer to what Game 1 was anyway. Because if we're honestly being real with ourselves about this, Game 5, Game 4, Game 3, they pretty much kind of were stinkers too. Because, like, you pretty much knew it was over midway through the third quarter in all 3 of those games, pretty much. And Game 1 for this series really set the bar extremely high for where we thought this entire thing was going to go. Hopefully, we can get back closer to something like that for Game 6 and 7. Got to pivot over to your Atlanta Hawks real quick, though, because they made a move for the franchise today that I believe is going to be for the better. Signing their general manager, Ansi Sala, to a long-term contract extension and also promoting him to the president of basketball operations. He was the runner-up for the 2026 League Executive of the Year award that went over to Brad Stevens. The Hawks went 20-6 to close the season at 46-36 overall, pretty much after the All-Star break, as a way to help create alignment with the ownership group and basketball leadership with Sala, Quinn Snyder. So sorry, KB. It looks like Quinn Snyder will be back again next year. I know that's something that you and several Atlanta Hawk fans weren't rooting for after what happened in the closeout game against the New York Knicks, but it looks like he will be back. But Sala being back, or at least signing that long-term extension, That's the smartest front office move they've made in a long time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's well deserved. I think that he honestly like deserved that Executive of the Year award just because, like I said, the expectation of the Atlanta Hawks. A lot of people thought that the Atlanta Hawks were going to be, another play-in team after the Trae Young trade was made. Nobody really gave them a shot to do anything this year, let alone be in the first round battle at one point with the New York Knicks, who could be the potential NBA champions. But he was the architect behind the whole thing. He had a vision for this team. He moved off of Trae Young, which was one of those things that was heavily scrutinized, but also understood from the Atlanta fan base was kind of split on it because those that love Trae, those that were critical of Trae, they had to kind of just see where the team was going to go. There's this new direction that they were going. They wanted to build their team off a lot of athletic wings that could defend. He was able to go out there and make that trade. Like he was the architect behind the Kuminga, the Porzingis for Kuminga trade. He also acquired C.J. McCollum at the deadline. He also made moves like bringing in Gabe Vincent for Luke Kennard, bringing in Jock Landale. Like he was behind all of these moves because he had a vision for this is exactly what this team needed. Now, you're right. I'm not in favor of the Quinn Snyder, bringing Quinn Snyder back because I do not feel like that is going to be something where you're going to have the success that you need to long term. I do feel like that has ran its course. But while I am skeptical of the coaching of the head coach, I am not critical of RC and what he's been able to do in a short amount of time. So what I will do is put all of my trust in what he's doing and look at the bigger picture as opposed to just saying I'm super critical of Quinn Snyder because it is bigger than that. For the Hawks, you're looking at this is the most success we don't have in years. We talked about Trae Young's tenure in Atlanta, where it was, outside the 2021 playoff run, it hasn't been anything worth remembering outside of that one playoff run. So this, if anything, it gave us hope. They pushed all their chips in on Jalen Johnson as the guy. Now, you know, coming off of the playoff series against the Knicks, it's okay for people to say that they were critical of Jalen Johnson going forward as the guy. But also, you got to think about it. This is the exact same team, the New York Knicks I'm talking about, that they're representing the Eastern Conference in the finals. So if you're gonna go out to somebody, at least you're going out to a potential champion. But I think that the moves they're making, I still think they got a couple of moves to make because, with them owning 2 first-round draft picks, who knows what this team could look like going into next season. With them possibly, being after Jaylen Brown, being linked to Jaylen Brown, who knows what could go on with this team. So the future is bright in Atlanta, and I think that they made the right moves to kind of jumpstart even like the quick rebuild that they had by bringing in these veterans. Now this is gonna come down to what they do in this offseason when it comes to CJ McCollum and Jonathan Kuminga, what their contract situation looks like. But I think RC has done amazing job. I think that he every bit of credit that he's gotten, he deserves it and more because he took over a situation that wasn't the greatest. You coming after the dumpster fire that Landry Fields created, and then you coming into basically organization that has not had a history of winning. You did everything that you could have done in a short amount of time, like because the Hawks were looking like at the beginning of the season, they were looking like they were set for another playing spot. I was thinking at one point, well, same old, same old. We're gonna do it again. We part of the sinister 3 playoff playing teams. Us, the Miami Heat, Chicago Bulls. We're gonna run through it again. And for him to get us all the way up to the 5th seed, I'm sorry, the 6th seed. I mean, it just shows you that the team chemistry, they gelled together at the right time. The right moves were made at the right time. And I'm looking forward to whatever they do decide to do as far as the future goes with some of these draft picks and with some of these free agency moves coming up.
I'm curious as to what he's going to end up doing with this draft pick because they have the number 8 overall pick, and we're already seeing some names that are now withdrawing out of this draft, deciding to go back to college for another year, who potentially probably would have been candidates to be taken within the top 10 or top 15, somewhere around there. So I'm curious as to what he's going to end up doing with this pick. He comes from the Golden State Warriors. He worked under Bob Myers over there. Not whatever Mike Dunleavy Jr. has going on over there now. No disrespect to him, but that's not working. Before that, he was with the San Antonio Spurs organization under R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich. So he comes from the right type of stuff. So that's a promising move for the Atlanta Hawks. And I just want to see, is he going to be a mover and shaker like Sam Presti's been for years? Because we know Sam Presti made trade after trade after trade. Sam Presti made so many trades to help get Oklahoma City to where they are today that you pretty much lost count on the number of trades that he made. So I'm curious as to seeing where exactly Onsi's going to go with this direction of this team long term, but I like the move.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've been curious about with the Hawks is, and this is something that they've not historically done well. Historically, outside of a few picks here and there, they have not drafted well. See, we just talked about Sam Presti. The one thing is that they have been able to use, like, acquire all of these picks, and they've been able to get a good mix of veterans, and they've been able to draft well. That's the difference between OKC and the Atlanta Hawks. Now, with Onsi at the helm now, let's see if they can hit on these draft picks, because we know in Landry Fields' tenure, they were unable to hit on most of their draft picks. Outside of like a few that you could talk about, they landed on a Jalen Johnson pick. You could say they landed on a Okongwu pick, but then you could also say no in the same sense because of where he was drafted and his output in the league so far. Because of where he was drafted, I believe Okongwu was drafted number 6. You talking about a guy drafted that high? I'm talking about that guy at this point should at least be, you know what I'm saying, fringe all-star at this point. Because we've seen, you know, historically, like they've drafted guys like Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter. Cam Reddish no longer in the league. DeAndre Hunter is bounced around from team to team since the Atlanta Hawks. So it is a thing to be said about drafting well and how that promotes the future. Because if they are able to nail these draft picks, because we could even see a potential that they package these 2 first rounders and try to move into the top 5. If they can find a team who's willing to, you know, to move back in the draft, they could possibly be in that top 5 in a very loaded draft class. Because, you know, we've seen at times, like I'm pretty sure coming out of that draft lottery, he, as aggressive as he's been since he's been in Atlanta, I'm pretty sure he walked out of that draft lottery and he was on the phones immediately calling teams or immediately talking to general managers about possibly getting into that top 5.
So I got some news for you. We can't even give Landry Fields credit for Okongwu or Jalen Johnson because they were drafted before he was promoted to general manager. So Landry Fields' tenure in Atlanta in terms of his draft picks he made, he doesn't even get credit for that. The draft picks he gets credit for are the ones who were an absolute disaster, including number 1 overall pick, Zachary Ricochet.
Yeah. Who I don't expect to be with the team much longer. I just don't. Was Landry Fields a part of the AJ Griffin draft?
Give me a second to look that up because
I believe that was like 2022.
No. So
23?
AJ Griffin was drafted in 2022. Landry Fields was officially named the general manager of the Hawks June of 2022. So maybe that was something that he oversaw. Either way, pretty much everything he touched as the general manager of the Atlanta Hawks pretty much was a disaster.
But even if we go further back, because even if we go further back, the Hawks have been, you know, in turmoil when you're talking about management, because we've talked about it. I know, you know, I've talked to Tone about it as far as they've been so historically bad at drafting that it's almost laughable that were even competitive, you know, at that time period. Because even if you want to go back to bad management moves, it even goes back to the DeJounte Murray trade. Do I think DeJounte Murray was a bad player at the time? No, it had nothing to do with that. But if you were going to mortgage your future for a fringe all-star, that's where I feel like that's why I said desperate teams make desperate moves. It starts there, and does that affect how you are able to draft in the future? Yes, because you still were paying that tax to the Spurs for a good portion of Trae Young's tenure because you wanted to get him a comparable number two, which didn't make sense because you got two guys playing the same position. So that did limit. I believe it was 4 first rounders that they had to part with in that DeJounte Murray trade. That made no sense. That's why I can honestly say, I feel like would never make a trade of like that.
Well, we have a key example of why that was never going to work. The 2019-2020 Houston Rockets, when they traded for Russell Westbrook to pair him alongside James Harden. Those were the same type of players, same type of play style, and there's only one basketball to go around. And we pretty much knew that when the DeJounte Murray trade happened and they were putting him with Trae Young, no matter how much Trae Young came hyping that up, talking about let's get to work.
And if anything, the Houston Rockets pairing was a better version of whatever the DeJounte Murray and Trae Young's pairing was because of the fact that you're talking about a team that was already playoff bound. You're talking about during the Hawks tenure, like with DeJounte Murray, they were playing bound. Like, so it was a little bit of a difference. And then they were able to get into the playoffs. I remember the year they played the Celtics. And it was such a struggle just for them to get the games that they got. It was like, it just has something to say about their management and their ownership, because I do think that I'm even critical of the ownership. I think that Wrestler has not done a good job at putting the right people in position to make this franchise successful. I think he's pretty much complacent. I think that they've been pretty much okay with just the fact that we're decent, we're okay, we'll be at the bottom of the league as far as every year, but we're gonna have a good time. But I think Tony Wrestler has done a terrible job at his job. And then when you're talking about the GMs of this job, I can probably point to maybe one. I can't remember his name, but the guy that came from Golden State, who was an architect of getting that team together during the Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green years. I'll get his name for you in just a second. But outside of that, like, they haven't had consistent great management. And that's one of the things, the reason why I felt like the Hawks needed a hard reset, and they were able to get a guy in that, has a vision at least.
Travis Schlenk is the name that you're
Travis
looking for.
Schlenk. Thank you. Travis Schlenk.
To be fair to the owner, and maybe this isn't necessarily fair, but I'm going to just go ahead and point it out. When it comes down to the major sports teams in Atlanta, especially those big three, only the Braves ownership gets it right. The Falcons don't get it right. The Hawks don't get it right. So, I mean, this is nothing new. We're hoping that they're finally moving in a direction where they can get it right.
But one thing I will say before, like not to too much harp on this topic, we've seen when the Hawks are playing good, when the Hawks have put out the right type of basketball team on the floor, the city of Atlanta will come and support the Hawks. Now, is it to the extent that they support the Braves or the Falcons? No, not that extent. But when you put a team out there that has a hope, that has a future, people will come support. But nobody's coming to support the team coming out there being in play-in every year. That you're asking them
to they show. Shouldn't.
Yeah, you're asking, like, I see it all the time, especially when they were saying, well, New York fans travel. I'm sure Atlanta fans would travel as well if we had something to travel for. See, the thing is, when 2021 was one of the years that I actually seen a lot of hope. No matter and I felt like they were playing with house money that year. I felt like no matter how it went, they overexceeded expectations. They got to a point where they were 2 wins away from the NBA Finals, which would have been way ahead of schedule. And then instead of adding to that, you went out and ran it back with the same squad. Then you went out and tried to make a disastrous trade for DeJounte Murray that pretty much gambled your future away. That was when I knew that the way that they think about things is not, it's just not focused on reality. It's not set in reality because reality shows if you have momentum from one year, you add. You do not run back with the same team because while you're running it back with the same team, other teams have went out and they made major moves that have improved their team dramatically.
Yeah, but didn't they pretty much do that in 2015 with the 1 seed anyway? They
absolutely.
Like so
Absolutely.
history repeats itself.
And that's my whole point. If you, like when you're content, and this is just people through life, if you're content, what are you more so to do? If you say like, hey, my job ain't going well, but I'm comfortable, more than likely you're not gonna look elsewhere for another job. You're gonna more likely stay doing what you're doing. You ain't gonna look to do anything else. I'm just saying that the Hawks have been content for a long time. And it takes somebody to be able to witness. Like a lot of people, I can understand why they don't want to be Hawks fans. I can understand why, because if you're talking about beloved teams in the city of Atlanta, it's the Braves, and then even when you talk about the Falcons have lost, but the Falcons is the reason why Arthur Blank sent out a letter to the fan base after the Falcons did not make the playoffs yet again for another year, because he knows that the fans show up regardless of how bad the Falcons are and have been historically for the last 7-8 years. They have shown up. I can actually go and tell you that I've been to Mercedes-Benz on multiple weeks and I've seen the fans show up. I don't care what's going on. So when it comes to it, you have the Braves, you have the Falcons, and then you have a gap, and then it goes down to the Hawks. It may
Is it the Hawks? Is it the Hawks, or is it the Atlanta Dream? Or is it even the soccer team? Honestly, I'm honestly asking this.
That is a good point, because for the longest, it wasn't like the Dream weren't even in that top stratosphere. And now they've made it to where people are supporting the Dream. People support the Dream a lot, to the point even now their games are even in State Farm. Like that wasn't even a thing, years ago. Like they have games in State Farm. You got Atlanta United doing their thing. They've at least won a championship during their tenure in Atlanta since they've been an actual organization. So, yeah, the Hawks going to fall into that bottom tier every single time, because if you don't put a product out there that people want to see, I don't just support you. I don't tell people to support just because they're here in the city. No, because if they're going to take money from people and say, hey, come out and support us, or we don't have people to come out and support us, because one thing I've always said, no matter OKC was good or bad, those fans came out and supported them. No matter if the Knicks were good or bad, those fans came out and supported them. It's certain fan bases that you never had to ask to come out and support their team because of the fact that they built such a great culture. Atlanta has not built a great culture when it comes to basketball. That is something that they still have yet to establish. I feel like they got momentum after this year, but they got to find a way to build off of that, because if you come out and you lay an egg next year and you basically go back to the old ways and back to the play, you're going to do away with all that momentum that you just had, all those people that were on your side looking for you, rooting for you to win. You're going to have them back on the other side of the equation because you did not build off of the success of this year.
Let's get to some quick hitters, man. And we'll keep our eye on everything that's happening in Atlanta, of course, with the Hawks in that situation. Let's go up to Beantown, where Joe Mazzulla was named the NBA Coach of the Year. We talked about him being a finalist for us, KD. But for me, and I promise you the playoffs are not the reason I feel this way. I feel like that award should have went to Mitch Johnson. And I know that people are going to say, but it's the Wemby factor. Y'all, before Wemby went down last year with the blood clots in his shoulder, the Spurs were nowhere near the playoffs. That team still wouldn't have made the playoffs, even if Wemby had to stay healthy all season. Mitch Johnson took a team that won 34 games a year ago, took them all the way to the number 2 seed in the West, and they're in the Western Conference Finals right now. That's a hell of a jump that they made.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I personally, Mitch Johnson would have been my coach of the year. That doesn't take anything away from Joe Mazzulla, because he did a hell of a job just being without Jason Tatum pretty much for the majority of the year. He had a potential MVP candidate in Jaylen Brown. Got him as high as they got him to the 2 seed. Now they did go out in, a fashion that they didn't even see coming because, like I said, being up 3-1, coming and losing in 7 to Philly was not the way that they envisioned the way this year was going to go. But things happen. I think that Joe Mazzulla is a great coach. I honestly would have wanted to see Mitch Johnson because I felt like Mitch Johnson deserved it this year. Just the turnaround that they had. You had the Defensive Player of the Year. You had a young team, one of the youngest teams in the NBA as the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Like, I think that what he did was crazy considering, the gauntlet that is the Western Conference. I think that, and like I said, I give credit to JB Bickerstaff as well in Detroit. I give credit to Joe Mazzulla. I just think that what he did was so special this year. And you can see he does make some coaching adjustments. So it's not like, oh, I just got Wemby out there and we're just going to go out there and go to work.
One other note on Mitch Johnson. This was his first actual full season as the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs because he took over in the interim role last year when Greg Popovich unfortunately suffered from that stroke. They signed Mitch Johnson after the season to be the permanent head coach.
And you got to think that's some big shoes to fill, man. You're talking about coming right after probably the greatest coach in a lot of people's eyes of all time, the greatest coach of all time, and Greg Popovich, and you're having to fill those shoes. I think that it's not just such a thing as just, oh, we got Wemby, because we've seen teams have historically great players and not gotten out the output that the Spurs got out this year. And you got to think about it. He's gotten them within 2 wins of a NBA Finals berth. I think that like we don't even have to count the playoffs, just the job that he did in the regular season. But I do want to say, though, like the 3 finalists for the award were, very deserving. Very deserving. I think that it was going to either be between Joe Mazzulla and Mitch Johnson. I just would have rather seen Mitch Johnson win it this year because of the job that he's done, but that doesn't take anything away from Joe Mazzulla. Well deserved for him as well, and he's done an incredible job as the head coach of the Celtics in his tenure as well. So, I mean, I'm not mad at it. I just would have rather seen it go to, Mitch Johnson just because of all the circumstances that he had to face and, taking over a younger team who doesn't necessarily have, because the one thing the Celtics still had is championship experience. They had guys that have been through these deep playoff runs together. So he still had some of those same core pieces. But, yeah, I think that it was one of those things that Mitch Johnson, he definitely did his job this year.
And if I had to throw a 4th man in there, it would be Tiago Splitter, even though he's not employed as a head coach right now. He definitely should be the head coach of the Blazers going forward.
Absolutely.
That owner, I don't know what he's on up there, but Tiago Splitter did a hell of a job and had to take over a hell of a situation very early into the season.
Yeah.
Moving on to the NFL, Derwin James signing another record-breaking contract, resetting the market for safeties once again. He will make $25.3 million per year for the next 3 years after signing for more than $75 million with the Chargers on Tuesday. Listen, man, well earned. He is the guy that makes that defense go.
Man, we talking about a guy that's been a dog since he's been in high school. You talking about every level that Derwin James has been at, he has dominated at that at that level. Whether it was college, NFL, he's been that guy. He's been one of the mainstays for the Chargers organization. We ain't really had too much to really be happy about. But if you talk about defensive leader, you're talking like him and Jamal Adams were 2 guys that I used to look at like they're that hybrid safety that can come down to that linebacker position and they can come on blitzes. They can be run stoppers. They can play, they can cover tight ends. They can cover receivers. Literally, he can do whatever you ask him to do. One of the best players at his position, and the money is well deserved. And I think that he's just only going to go up from here. This is only going to motivate him even more to, continue to do what he's doing. So congratulations to him. Well deserved.
Now to some baseball. If you missed it on Memorial Day, the Houston Astros had the first no-hitter in the league since 2024, but it was a collective no-hitter. Congratulations to Houston on the accomplishment. But when it's that collective thing, KB, it just doesn't move me as much as it does when it's just one guy that's out there getting the whole job done.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because you're saying one guy's name being etched in history as throwing a no-hitter as opposed to a complete no-hitter from a team. I get what you're saying. I think it's just such a rare occurrence that we get to see no hitters in general. That the point that they are, it is going to be one of those things where they're going to say, "Hey, I mean, it's a team accomplishment. We can all bask in, the glory of that." But I'm from that like cut from that cloth where we grew up and it was guys that we would hear about throwing no hitters, just like a complete game by themselves. And which is one of the hardest things to do, because not only does it rely on you, it relies on your fielding behind you, the guys that are fielding behind you to all be in sync for 9 straight innings. So, I still have not yet witnessed a no hitter in person, and I know that is like a crazy thing to have, like one of the anomalies of sports, to be able to witness a no hitter being thrown, let alone a team no hitter. But I still say it's a great accomplishment. But like you said, I get where you're coming from as far as the team versus a solo no hitter from a guy.
Becky Hammon is doubling down on her Jalen Brunson take she had 2 years ago in 2024, where she said that she didn't believe that Jalen Brunson could be a 1A option on a championship team, just simply because the history of the league does not favor smaller guards being the ones that lead the way. Well, ever since the Knicks clinched their ticket to the NBA Finals, folks have been all over her helmet about this, and Becky Hammon came out and said, "I stand on what I said. I stand by what I said, and if I'm proven to be wrong, I can live with that. I'll just be wrong." I mean, number one, I respect her doubling down on her take, because the Knicks haven't won the championship yet. So you have to complete the job first to officially say that the take is wrong. But I also understand where she's coming from. In our lifetime, KB, we've only seen 2 players who were the number one option on teams who won championships, and they were point guards or smaller guards. And that would be Chauncey Billups in 2004 with the Pistons. And you can make an argument that that was more of a collective of what they were doing, especially Ben Wallace and company on the defensive end of the floor. And of course, the dynasty that Steph Curry and the Warriors built over the past decade or so. We weren't born when Isaiah Thomas was doing his thing with the Detroit Pistons yet. So she's not wrong necessarily on this take of saying that smaller guards don't usually get it done. But she also did say Jalen Brunson is a hell of a player. So she wasn't disrespecting him by saying that. She was honestly saying what we've been watching our entire lives pretty much.
Yeah, and I would say, like, when you talk about that Chauncey Billups one, I would put that more of a collective team, just because 1 through 5 they pretty much had a collection of guys that could go out there and get it done. But you're right, Steph Curry right now in our lifetime would be the only one. I even saw a list that said Kyrie. I said no, Kyrie was not the number one option on his championship team, so we can't say that. So technically, she is right.
But we know that the people that put that list together are probably just Brian haters.
Yeah, because
anybody that know anything about basketball know that he was not the number one option.
Yeah, and that they were being obtuse for, just to try to fit the narrative in that smaller guards have got it done. But no, Kyrie was not the number one guy. Even Allen Iverson, if we were going to talk about his championship run, it was a reason why they weren't able to beat the Shaq and Kobe Lakers in 2001. Like, that was a reason why that they, she never said they couldn't get to the finals. She just said they can't win. And so to this point, her take ain't wrong until the end of the finals. At the end of the finals, Jalen Brunson's holding up that finals MVP and that championship trophy, then her take would have been wrong. But we got to wait for that to play out. So as far as her doubling down on it, she has to, because you can't back down now, because like we just said, her take ain't wrong just yet. Like, until it happens, she still said what she said, and I respect it, because the one thing you can't do is let people back into a corner based off of results that haven't even necessarily happened yet, because she has been historically right. When have we seen the last small guard that we've seen other than Steph Curry? We can't. You have to go all the way back to Isaiah Thomas. You have to. When we're talking about the main guy, the engine of the team, is only Isaiah and then Steph Curry. Outside of them, we haven't seen small guards win. Steve Nash didn't do it. Jason Kidd didn't do it, even though, I look at those guys as more of a, not necessarily a scoring guard, but a playmaking guard. We haven't seen it. So she's like her take. I think it was more who said it than what was said. I think it was more of that. You know what I'm saying? Because if we had like if we had one of the great respected guys, like if Michael Jordan said that, nobody questions a lot of it. But the fact that Becky Hammond said it, now people are saying, like poking holes through it. Well, he's proving you wrong. Just like what Pat Bev said about James Harden. Sometimes you gotta let things play out a little bit. Once you let things play out, then you'll see why they say what, like people have been critical about certain things because James Harden was Pat Bev's guy. We heard it throughout the playoffs. We seen on Twitter. We seen him going at it saying he's better than Wade. Sometimes you gotta let things play out. Sometimes nothing needs to be said at all. Just let things play out, and then eventually you'll see exactly why the takes are either asinine or they actually have some validity to it.
Well, to your point about people questioning Becky Hammond being the person who said it, to those people, I would say y'all need to go do your research. That's a basketball Hall of Famer. So she knows what she's talking about.
And Popovich swears by her as a great basketball mind. So if you question her, then I guess you questioning Popovich as well because he's fully in support of her. So my thing is, you got a lot of people. I still say, it's because a woman said it. It don't necessarily her. It's because a woman said it, and it has something to do with the men's game, and that's why they find so many flaws with. I don't agree with it because, like I said, we've seen some women have some. Like we have seen some professional basketball like players that are women have some of the best IQ, some of the best knowledge. They're even better analytically than some of the guys when it comes to analyzing the game because we've seen a lot of guys that played in the NBA can't analyze the game.
I'm gonna close out this topic simply by saying this: to a lot of the dudes who probably have that mentality that are questioning that because she's a woman, get out there on the court with her right now, and I bet she'll bust your ass straight up. Like honestly. Last quick hitter we got for you: Brendan Sorsby. His request to be reinstated as eligible for the 2026 season as the Texas Tech quarterback has been denied. KB, the NCAA coming up with this decision, putting Sorsby's lawsuit against the NCAA seeking an injunction for his eligibility for the upcoming season. The court date looms on Monday in Lubbock County. For those who are not up to date on this situation, when it comes down to Brendan Sorsby, this was a gambling related situation of what ended up taking place with Sorsby, filing a lawsuit on a local court in Lubbock County back on May 18th. And in the suit, he acknowledged betting on thousands of sporting events as part of his gambling addiction. That included betting on Indiana football games while he was on Indiana's football team. He says that he did make it clear that he never bet on a game he played in, nor did he bet against his team. I just simply got one thing to say. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
My thing is, what did he think was going to happen? Like, my thing is, we're talking about gambling has been such a big thing in sports in general. We've seen it across different leagues when it came to the NFL, college football, NBA. They're trying to save the integrity of the game. And so, yes, you are going to get the book thrown at you because of the fact that it's been so many different like violations at this point. Now they're just trying to, hold something sacred, like whatever they can hold sacred to the game and the integrity of the game because yeah, I think that in his mind that he felt like that, well, since I didn't play in the game, it's okay. Well, I'm sure Calvin Ridley felt the same way when he was hurt and he was betting on games, but it doesn't make it any better what you did because you are held to a different standard. You are not a casual fan. You are not a fan in general. You are a part of that NCAA scope. You are in that world of college football. You are not allowed to partake in some of the same things that like maybe me and you are allowed to do, X. Like, so you are held to a different standard. But if you don't want to be held to a different standard, don't take all the responsibility that comes with it. Don't play professional sports because we've known once NIL and everything else, money that came into the college football landscape, this is a business. This is a business just like anything else. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that they denied it. I mean, It's just crazy that a guy made something that he felt like was harmless, and now it's changed the course of his career now. So I don't feel bad for him because like at certain times you are old enough to know better, and I felt like it was one of those things where he felt like since he hadn't got caught that it was okay, and they showed him like we have no mercy for guys that damage the integrity of the game.
Let this be a lesson to everybody out there. What's done in the dark will eventually come to the light. That's gonna wrap up part one of the Swing That Now podcast. We'll be back with part two because we got to talk more about that Eastern Conference, man. The Knicks going to the finals for the first time in 27 years, and the new definition of quitting that comes out of Cleveland. We'll be right back with part two. Stay tuned.